Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're looking for the crypto highlights from March 10th to the 17th, well, you came to the right place. Get ready for some major regulatory shakeups, market swings that'll make you dizzy, and even those big institutions making some bold crypto moves.
Yeah, it really has been a wild ride.
Yeah.
But what's really got me thinking is how all these different events are starting to connect. It's like we're seeing a new, more mature, and honestly, a much more interesting crypto landscape emerge.
I totally agree. It's not just about like Bitcoin's price anymore, right? I mean, even Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, even he said crypto is leaving its like cowboy era
Yeah.
behind. Yeah. He's saying that the second Trump administration's moves, like creating that strategic Bitcoin reserve, that's a major factor.
Wow, a government Bitcoin stash. I mean,
Mhm.
who would have predicted that back in 2020?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
It really shows how much things have changed. And that shift, that's happening in Congress too. Senate Banking Committee just passed some pretty big legislation for stablecoin regulation. I think that's a huge step toward making crypto more legitimate, you know? And it could totally change how we all use crypto in the future.
I see what you're saying. But do you think all this new regulation could end up stifling the kind of like grassroots innovation that made crypto so cool in the beginning? That whole move fast and break things attitude. How do you think this new regulatory landscape will impact like everyday investors like our listener?
That is the big question, isn't it?
Hmm.
On the one hand, clear rules could attract more of those big institutional investors and help crypto go mainstream. That could mean more stability and maybe even higher returns for everyone.
Right.
But on the other hand, too much regulation could totally kill that decentralized spirit that drew so many people to crypto in the first place. It's a tough balance to strike,
Yeah.
and it'll be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
For sure.
And don't forget, the U.S. Treasury is meeting with industry leaders to figure out how to manage those Bitcoin reserves. So the government's getting more and more involved in figuring out how crypto fits into their plans.
It feels like we're at a real turning point. While the regulators are busy setting the rules, major institutions are diving right in Deutsche Börse's Clearstream. They're now offering custody and settlement services for Bitcoin and Ether, and they're aiming for those big institutional clients.
Yeah, that's a major move. And Ripple is getting in on the action too. They just filed a trademark for Ripple custody. Sounds like they're planning to offer software for managing all kinds of digital assets, crypto, virtual, even fiat currency. Seems like everyone wants a piece of the crypto pie now.
So all this institutional interest is heating up, but what does it actually mean for the average investor? Is this like a sign that crypto is finally going mainstream, or is this just the beginning of something even bigger?
Well, it definitely shows that those big financial players are starting to trust crypto more. That kind of validation could make the whole market more stable and legitimate, which is good for everyone.
Okay, yeah.
But of course, it also raises those concerns about, centralization and control. That whole debate about innovation versus regulation,
Sure.
it's always there.
True. True. And speaking of, uncertainty and ups and downs,
Yeah.
we can't forget about market volatility. Bitcoin took a little dip this week, falling to about $82,852. And Ethereum and Solana, they kind of followed suit. Looks like economic worries are making some investors nervous. It's always a roller coaster, isn't it?
That's true. Short-term volatility is just part of the crypto game.
Yeah.
You got to remember that the long-term trends, those are what really matter.
Right.
And speaking of the long-term VanEck, they just came out with some pretty bold predictions. They think Ether could reach $6,000 and Bitcoin could hit $180,000 by the end of 2025.
Wow, $6,000 Ether by 2025. That's a big prediction. What do you think about these long-term forecasts? Are they realistic or are they getting a little too optimistic? How should our listener approach this kind of, crystal ball gazing? It's easy to get caught up in the hype, right?
Oh, it is exciting. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You have to balance that excitement with some healthy skepticism, understanding what drives those short-term swings and those long-term trends. That's key. It's all about doing your research, knowing how much risk you're comfortable with, and not letting your emotions control your investments.
That's some solid advice. All right, before we jump into DeFi, let's take a minute to recap what we've learned about this new regulatory world. What are the big takeaways for our listener?
I'd say the biggest one is that the Wild West days of crypto might actually be over. Governments are stepping in with rules which could make things more stable, but also potentially limit innovation.
It's definitely something to watch closely. All right, are you ready to dive into the world of DeFi?
Let's do it. So one of the most exciting things this week, I think, is the launch of the Deep Link protocol, DLC on the MEXC exchange.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's offering both spot and futures trading. And get this, they're giving early users a huge prize pool. DeFi always finds interesting ways to get people involved.
A prize pool, huh? That definitely caught my attention. But, for those of us who aren't DeFi experts, can you break down what makes this Deep Link Protocol or DLC so interesting? What sets it apart?
Well, what's really cool about DLC is that it's focusing on making those cross-chain interactions more secure and transparent. You see a lot of DeFi projects, they're kind of stuck on their own blockchains, but DLC is trying to bridge that gap. They're tapping into this growing demand for interoperability, which is like the holy grail for the future of DeFi.
Okay, interoperability. That sounds like a big deal. But I think I need a refresher here. Why is this concept of interoperability so important? What does it actually mean for someone who's using or investing in DeFi?
Imagine if you could move your assets and data between different blockchains without any problems.
Yeah.
No middlemen, no crazy fees. That's the promise of interoperability.
Huh.
It opens up so much more flexibility and efficiency for DeFi applications. I mean, you could access way more services, get the best rates across different platforms, and really control your own finances. It would be a total game changer.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. So DLC is trying to make this seamless cross-chain future a reality. That's pretty ambitious. How does it actually work? And what kind of impact could it have on DeFi as a whole?
DLC uses a clever combination of smart contracts and cryptography to allow for secure communication and transfers between different blockchains. That's kind of a technical deep dive, but basically it's aiming to be more efficient, transparent, and user-friendly than what we have now. If it's successful, it could unlock a wave of new innovations in DeFi. We could see financial products and services we haven't even thought of yet.
It sounds like we need a whole separate deep dive just for DLC. But for now, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. We've talked about regulatory changes, institutions getting involved, the ups and downs of the market, and now this cool new DeFi development. It's been a wild ride through the crypto world this week. What are some key takeaways that you think our listeners should really focus on?
It has been a busy week. I think the overall theme is that the crypto world is growing up, and it's happening in a lot of different ways. We see governments figuring out regulations, institutions embracing digital assets, and innovators like the DLC team pushing the boundaries of what's possible. This is creating a really dynamic and exciting space to be a part of.
It's like we're standing at the beginning of a whole new era. We talked earlier about Kevin O'Leary's comment about the end of the crypto Wild West, and it really stuck with me. It feels like things are changing and the future of crypto is being shaped right in front of us.
Absolutely. I think it's clear that crypto is here to stay. It's become a part of the financial world, and its influence is only going to get bigger. The question is, what role will each of us play in shaping this future? Will it be a world with more financial inclusion and opportunity, or will it just become like traditional finance, with all the same problems?
That's a really important question to think about. It makes you realize that we all have a part to play in how this unfolds. But, before we get too philosophical, let's bring things back down to earth for a second. What are some practical steps our listener can take to navigate this always changing crypto world? I mean, it can be overwhelming. Where should they even start?
Yeah, it can be a lot to take in. I think the most important thing is to stay curious and informed. Don't be afraid to dig into the details, explore different projects, and ask questions. There are so many resources out there, online communities, educational platforms. They can all help you make sense of it all. Of course, you can always listen to our deep dives to stay up to date on the latest trends.
Absolutely. This whole conversation about institutions getting involved, it reminds me of the early days of the internet. Remember all the skepticism back then? It's interesting to see history kind of repeating itself with crypto. What do you think?
There's some parallels there. The internet was once this weird new technology that nobody understood, and now it's everywhere. Crypto is on a similar path, even though it's still pretty early. I think the main takeaway is that we need to approach this with an open mind and be willing to learn. The potential is huge.
Well said. But I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
For sure. We covered a lot today.
So as we finish our crypto deep dive this week, what's the one big takeaway you want to leave our listener with? What should they be thinking about as they try to navigate this exciting and sometimes confusing world?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the future of crypto is being created right now. And you, the listener, you have the power to be a part of it. Whether you're an investor, a developer, or just someone who's interested in this technology, your choices matter.
I love that you have the power to be a part of it. That's so true. And with that in mind, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep learning. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into the newest crypto trends. But until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
Yeah, exactly. The crypto world never stops changing, and the only way to stay ahead is to keep learning and adapting.
Well said. That's all for our deep dive this week. Thanks for joining us. So, as we finish our crypto deep dive this week, what's the one big takeaway you want to leave our listener with? What should they be thinking about as they try to navigate this exciting and sometimes confusing world?
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember that the future of crypto, it's being built right now. And you, the listener, you actually have the power to be a part of it.
Hmm.
Whether you're an investor, as a developer, or just someone who's curious about this whole technology thing, your choices, they actually matter.
I love that you have the power to be a part of it. It's
Yeah.
so true. So, with that in mind, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep learning. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into all the latest crypto trends. But until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
Definitely. The crypto world, it never stops changing. And the only way to stay ahead of the game is to keep learning and adapting.
Well said. That's all for our deep dive this week. Thanks for joining us.